75% of enterprise software engineers are expected to be using AI code assistants, up from 10% in early 2023. As of 2025, a report estimates 41% of all new code is now AI generated. That figure is very conservative, though. My name is Paul Nashawaty. I'm the practice lead for the AppDev practice, and I'm joined by Z. Z, how you doing today?
Hi, Paul. Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Do you want to introduce yourself, introduce the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Zvonimir, but as you, Paul, said, everyone called me Z. I'm a founder and CEO of a product called Pythagora. Pythagora is basically a tool for building internal applications with AI. So basically, whatever process that you want to automate, whatever bottlenecks that you as a company want to solve, you just tell Pythagora, hey, I have this problem, and it will do the rest. It will build the specification, it will build the front end, the back end, and basically deploy the whole application.
Well, Z, it's great to have you on. I mean, this is absolutely top of mind for a lot of developers. It's top of mind for a lot of organizations. I think, 2025 was the year of like experimenting and innovating. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, because as we talk about, the rapid evolution of AI development in the market, it's really shifting from innovation and prototype focused vibe coding to really secure enterprise ready AI workflows. And, the urgency of opportunities for companies to really read the skill and for developers and stay competitive, because they're going to be boxed out if they don't. So Z, I'd like to get your take on a couple of things, right? When we look at all of these different approaches and, we see a lot of the changes between professional developers shifting to the citizen developers and all this stuff happening in between, we got to really cut through the noise, like what's real and what's not. There are hundreds of AI coding tools that are launched weekly, right? We see that all the time, right? And we see that marketing challenges is explained, that there's not just another code generator, but a full life cycle AI development platform that's needed for these things. What's your take on this? Because there's a lot of changes that are happening in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, now we're in this transitioning period from some kind of prototyping apps, from seeing how AI can be utilized in coding to actually AI coding something that goes into production. And in terms of to your points, what is actually real and what is not, I think right now we're in a stage where we are focusing, we as a market, we're focusing on smaller applications that have big utilization. So for example, these can be internal applications. So what we're focused on, and that is, let's say you want to create an onboarding flow, right? An onboarding flow can be really complex, really different from one company to another. And with AI, you can build any kind of onboarding flow very easily and reduce all that time from an IT department. So they don't have to do manual onboarding and just have one flow, just automates the whole thing. And in terms of what kind of separates the real applications from hype, I would say that move to enterprise in terms of security, that is the number one priority for enterprises. But aside from security, there are guardrails and observability. AI, it can code anything, but what is important for companies to understand really what is AI doing there. Tools like Pythagora, they can build 10,000 lines of code in a single day, and you will not process those 10,000 lines of code. So you really want to have a nice way to understand, okay, this code that is built, what system is it touching? How does it go to the database? What queries is it doing? So basically have this observability and obviously put guardrails on what it can actually do.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot here that we kind of have to think about, right? Because from an organization's perspective, there's a bridge in the gap between the heritage environment to the new environments. They want to make sure that their operations teams, whether it's the lines of businesses being, citizen developers or the professional developers, really kind of being most effective in delivery. But this is an education of the market. And I think that there's this kind of talk on vibe coding, but there's also this thing about vibe coding. Is it real? Is it what does it really mean? But most enterprise buyers really still associating AI coding with messy prototypes, right? We see this with the recent MIT study that came up that 95% or more of AI projects failed, right? But I get that because there's prototypes, there's hallucinations, there's unreliable output, right? And a lot of that kind of comes out of AI projects. That number of 95% really is attributed in my mind to the experimental phase, right? There's a lot of things that happen and organizations trying to figure it out. So the challenge really is about reframing AI development as you mentioned, into a secure, structured, and production-worthy kind of approach that requires change of perception, right? It also requires reframing risks and also showing real use cases, not just demos of like conceptually things of what you can do. Would you agree with this, or is this kind of like a different shift in the market, the way they should be thinking about it?
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. As you said, AI is such a new technology and it's like super powerful that people are experimenting with so many things, right? And I, to be honest, like to your point, having so many projects fail, I think that's a good thing. That means that people are willing to experiment. They're willing to put systems under test. Even if it's something wild, I want to refactor like a huge database. This is a very common case that we got a lot of requests to do. Unfortunately, this is still not possible. If you have a code base of like 10 million lines of Java code from like 20 years ago, unfortunately, at this moment, it is not possible to like fully automate it and actually rewrite it. But that's not a bad thing, right? We as a world, we are in this new stage where people are trying to see what is working and what is not working. And out of all of these use cases, cases are popping up that are working very well. As I mentioned, building internal applications. If you build a simple onboarding workflow, for my example from before, it's a simple thing. It's not even close to 10 million lines of Java code, but it has a utility. And this is what is important. It's important that people start adapting AI and actually start automating, grunt work in enterprises. So yeah, I think we're on a pretty right track.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that AI is a tool. AI is a tool to get the job done. It's AI manages code, right? It creates code. It helps create content and the mundane tasks. Humans manage intent, right? That's the IP piece of it. So that concept of like understanding that element, it's important to really take to heart, right? When we think about things like in our research, in my 2025 research, we were seeing that out of our study, we see that organizations want to release code on an hourly basis. We see 24% of respondents indicate that they want to release code on an hourly basis. Yet, this is a challenge for a lot of organizations because the business KPIs don't always line up with the developers. So like when we think about it, this narrative is a major mental shift for developers and CIOs alike, right? Because the business needs to have an alignment to what the developers are doing and vice versa. They need to understand each other's goals and needs here. It's not about the DevOps team just pushing the big green button, putting the code out the door. It's about understanding what that looks like. So the challenge is really turning from a philosophical idea into a concrete value proposition, right? We're seeing that organizations need to have higher velocity, fewer bottlenecks, and basically more focus on the business value, as you were kind of highlighting. And by producing a streamlined way of showing how this is a new model that works, that fits into existing DevOps pipelines, workflows, and goals, that really helps them with like taking the existing CI/CD pipeline across the SDLC and making it more in line to today's expectations for the business. Is that really what you're thinking, or is that kind of a different mindset?
Well, I mean, I think every hour release, it's quite extreme. What's kind of where did you maybe see that, or what's the background for this type of like super rapid release?
Yeah. Usually it has to do with the iteration of code. I mean, we're seeing actually, I've been doing trending studies since 2022 to my 2025 data. In 2022, the hourly release of code across the SDLC was 7%. Then in 23, it was 8%, and it jumped up to 24% in my 25 research. So we're seeing this growth happen. It's that iteration process is happening very quickly. But we're also seeing a lot of different things that kind of shift around the pipeline, the workflows, and the roles of the DevOps teams to make sure that they're more in line to march into the SLOs and not so much march into like, hey, let's just get this code out the door and get poor quality product out the door.
Oh yeah, I mean that definitely makes sense. Like CI/CD pipeline, the DevOps part of the whole release cycle is the most crucial part, and it isn't just like one thing, like CI/CD pipeline. There are many different things in it. Like automated like unit tests, integration tests, manual testing, deployment. There are so many of these things in it. Code review. I think code review is a really big one. And I think that it's important to start using AI in each of these components one by one, and start making the whole release cycle faster and faster. One thing that I see is working pretty well right now are code reviews. You have different products for code reviews that really help, and they are really helpful when you reviewing code, that you shorten that time, let's say from 5 hours to 1 hour, and that's one improvement. Then the next one, I'm still not seeing so many testing improvements, but likely that will come, so yeah, I definitely think it's a good place to start, and start shortening that time frame as much as possible.
Yeah. So see, in my practice, I cover day zero, day one, day two, and DevSecOps. So I cover build, release, and operations, anything in the CI/CD pipeline that touches the SDLC, right? So I agree with you that inside those silos, instituting AI to help accelerate will give you productivity gains, right? We're also seeing that, creation of application is they're happening not just with the professional developer, but they're happening at the lines of business. So the citizen developer is taking some of this onus of creating this with these new AI systems, right? So, but this means we need to overcome that concern about AI security and compliance. Now, regulations, compliance, and governance is an integral part of what the organization needs to put in place. Otherwise, you can't let your citizen developers create applications. But enterprises that are skeptical about AI systems that generate or modify production code, that really needs to be kind of thought about here and overcome, because the marketing challenge is really demonstrating that secure AI workflows not only are possible, but they offer superior approaches over traditional pipelines. Those organizations that can figure this out have a competitive advantage. The ones that don't are going to be boxed out. Right. So I'd love to get your idea or your thoughts around how you can talk about secure spaces and how they were created as a response to like this kind of challenge in the market, and the messaging around security. It must lead, not follow. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I agree 100%. We created, as you mentioned, secure spaces. This is basically Pythagora's silo of your applications. So let's say, you have a lot of tools today that you can, say like, hey, I want to build this, and it will build it. You click deploy, it will deploy. But you don't know where is it deployed? Are there any endpoints that are exposed to the world, and these kind of things? So what we created is the secure spaces where no one outside of your organization can access any application, and that means any app, any endpoints, any kind of trigger to the code cannot be accessed by anyone who is not logged in from within your organization. And even though this was it was very similar the case even before, people want to have this kind of, as I mentioned, observability over, okay, this actually is secure. This is absolutely the first layer in getting people to be confident in AI built systems. The second layer is having observability over how does the created application access any of your data. That means database, third-party services, any kind of outside system that holds the data for your organization. And I'm seeing that across the board, companies really want to see like a tangible way to understand what is this application touching. You know, if you think about, let's say, the future, let's say some kind of AGI happens, regardless if it's going to happen in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it likely will come. I don't see a world in which humans are, for example, reviewing the code base or even writing the code itself at some point. I think that AI will just become so good that it will do all by itself. The question is, how do we get there? How do we increase our confidence over time, whether it is 2, 5, 10 years? How do we increase it so that at one point we can lift our hands off and say, okay, my code base is managed by AI fully? And I think all of these things that I mentioned definitely gets into play. First one is security. That's absolutely the number one. The second one is the observability, so that people understand what's happening. And the third one are the guardrails, so that AI cannot theoretically do something, even by accident, that could be malicious to the data.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think you touched on something that's very important to not to gloss over. AI adoption is not just a developer piece, it's a marketing problem as well. So there's a people, process, and technology approach when you look at that AI upskilling gap, right? It's not just about the tech stack, right? Because I think that there's a fundamental philosophy change. Right now, we have a human in the loop, right? We have to have a human in the loop because it's just nobody's really 100% confident that AI can do all the code review and make sure things are working the way they should be working. But to your point, that gap is going to close very, very quickly. So, but convincing organizations to really reskill developers as much as a marketing challenge as a technical one, that is a challenge because developers aren't really trained for AI workflows. They're using the tools as a tool, so to speak, right? It's a productivity gain, not so much as a, like it's they don't look at it differently than that, right? It's not to replace them, it's to make them more optimized. But many enterprises don't see the urgency around this because they're looking at it and going, well, there's one side of the enterprise that are going, we want to drive this forward. We want to empower our lines of business to do the work. But there's another side of the business that's going, well, they're getting the job done, and however they get it done, they can use whichever tools they want. Again, the compliance, regulations, and governance needs to be put in place, but this is breaking through that inertia that requires clear storytelling, right? And it's the risk of falling behind, which is the competitive getting boxed out, the cost of retaining versus replacing talent, which is a big factor. Skill gaps is always an issue, and complexity is another one. And then the competitive advantage for those that embrace AI accelerated development early really overcome those challenges and have a competitive advantage. I think that's a big factor here. And I think that's something that we should kind of unpack a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I would add one more. I think it's well said, as a marketing challenge to actually explain people what is this security and what is this observability. I would say also there is the user experience perspective. Someone who is using this system, let's say a team lead, today and likely for quite a bit of time, humans will be the ones who are responsible, maybe, for forever. But someone needs to be responsible for what the outcome that happens. And today, let's say a team lead who manages a team of, let's say, 5 people, and they're building some product, they are responsible for whatever they push out. And they are the ones who need to understand, okay, this is what we are releasing. These are potential consequences. I'm going to sign off on this in this case, in this case, and in this case. And I need to see this in order for me to be confident in this system. So yeah, I think that the challenge is, across the board. But I think in terms of companies, especially enterprise companies, I think one aspect that will be lagging behind the technology is definitely the mindset. Because it's such a crucial, an enterprise, if they have a data leak, the whole business can go under, right? And this might happen if you're not careful, it can be literally a bug in AI coded code base. So it's super critical. So I think there will be time even behind the technology itself where companies will need to shift their mindset. And one a very interesting thing, my perception of the markets, like the global economy, like whatever trillions and tens of trillions of dollars there are, I think that in the next like 10 years or 15 or 20 years, the whole economy will, not the whole, but maybe 70% of the economy will flip from the current state to AI-powered workflows, automations, or whatever that is, especially when robots come in and all these things. And now the question is, who will be able to adapt to this change the fastest and actually place their position in this new world where AI is doing so much, because it's such a powerful technology and it's coming on in such a rapid way like we have never seen before. Industrial revolution was happening through decades, and the world had decades and decades and decades to adjust, and this is happening within years. So
very fast. Yeah. No, Z, this has been really, really great. And it gives the audience a lot to think about and what to unpack. We talk about, not to scare anybody, but it's coming, right? And you have to be prepared, right? And I think that's where we're at. But Z, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for being my guest on this podcast. I really appreciate your insights. It's very interesting to me, and love to see where we're at a year from now. And it's, who knows, it's going to be maybe it's just two of our agents talking to each other a year from now. We'll see what happens. Right. But I also want to send out a big thanks to all of you who did. We really do appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But for now, that wraps up this episode, and we'll be back next Wednesday for another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.